Hello, I'm Caroline Dunford, and I'm going to be reading to you from one of the Euphemia Martin's mysteries, A Death at the Races. In the part that I'm reading, Euphemia is about to have her first night at home from her honeymoon, and it features her new husband, the spy master Fitzroy, and Giles the butler. "It appears we have a visitor," said my new husband. "Not tonight," I said. "Giles should have refused them." "Apparently he tried, but to no avail." Bertram's upper lip was looking uncommonly stiff. "Who on earth is it?" "He refused to give his name, but I rather suspect." As if waiting for his cue, our visitor erupted out of the library door. "It's rather late, you know," he said. "Poor Giles was beginning to worry. You could have telephoned him. You do know I had a telephone put in, don't you? It was my wedding present to you. I'm sure you'll both find it very useful. Living out in the middle of nowhere. May I kiss the bride?" And with that he darted towards me, and before I could step back, put a hand on each shoulder and placed a firm kiss on each cheek. "Fitzroy," I said wearily. "Fitzroy," said Bertram. "What the devil do you mean by showing up here? Tonight of all nights?" The spy smiled charmingly and tilted his head on one side. "I don't suppose you would accept I merely happened to be passing." "On a filthy night like this? In the middle of nowhere?" said Bertram. By now I could see he'd begun to quiver with rage. "I wanted to give you the very best for your future happiness." "Fitzroy," said Bertram in a low tone and through gritted teeth. "Oh, very well," said Fitzroy, shrugging. "I needed to speak to Euphemia, and as it happened, I was nearby. Can't tell you where or why." He smiled again, perfectly at ease invading our home late in the night. Bertram turned to me. "I thought I'd made it perfectly clear that we would have no more dealings with this man." "Heavens, Euphemia," said Fitzroy. "You're barely married a moment and he's gone all dictatorial." Bertram flushed slightly red. "I mean, I thought we had agreed this chapter of our lives had closed." Fitzroy looked from him to me, clearly enjoying the situation. "I take it you haven't told him yet?" "Told me what?" said Bertram. Having been flushed, he suddenly paled. "It was a real vicar that married us, wasn't it? It wasn't one of his ploys." "Honestly, Bertram," I said, taking the higher ground while I could. "We've been living as man and wife for over a week. Do you think I would—" Bertram went back to being flushed. No, of course not," he said. "It's just that with that dastardly fellow one never knows where one stands." "The dastardly fellow is still here," said Fitzroy. We both ignored him. "You were quite correct in saying I wanted to close this chapter of my life upon our marriage," I said. Fitzroy staggered dramatically as if shot, one hand pressed to his chest. We both continued to ignore him. "However, that was before I was charged with murder." "Yes," said Bertram. It may have been a trick of the light, but the loving look in his eyes appeared slightly diminished. His tone was certainly wary. I looked over at Fitzroy. "I take it I can tell him now." "As long as Giles isn't listening in the shadows," said the spy. "He wouldn't let me tell you until we were married," I said in a rush. "I wanted to, but he made me promise and I couldn't—" Bertram held up his hand. "This man has some hold over you. You give your obedience to him over your own husband." "Oh, no," said Fitzroy. "She's never been obedient with me. Reluctantly compliant? Aggressively acquiescent? Contemptuous? Which is best applied, Euphemia?" "If you could stop enjoying yourself for a minute and let me explain," I said. "Go back into the library. I need to speak to my husband alone." Fitzroy gave a mock bow. Then he threw me a wink behind Bertram's back that I interpreted as a sign he would be listening in. "So?" said Bertram, as the door closed behind the spy. I sighed. "So, when I was arrested for murder, Fitzroy offered me 2 ways out of the mess. One was to flee abroad." "What?" Bertram exploded. "Oh, not like that," I said. "He doesn't think of me in any romantic way. I'm useful to him, that's all." "How?" "As an asset," I said. "Nothing more. Or it was nothing more." "Euphemia, If you don't stop prevaricating and spit it out, I swear I will take that umbrella over there and go into the library and thrash that man. I could almost hear the eavesdropper thinking, you can try. I joined the intelligence service, I said, as an agent of the Crown. I'm only allowed to tell one person, and Fitzroy said as I kept almost getting married, I shouldn't tell you until after we were. I agreed. I'd rather not have told you at all. Is that all? Said Bertram. What do you mean? You're a spy now. It always seemed to me you were doing the lion's share of the work whenever we were involved with him. I can't see how it would be any different. I took an oath, I said. To protect king and country. Of course, I'd expect nothing less of you. We both tried to do our bit. You don't understand. He's my superior now. Bertram looked at me blankly. I have to follow his orders. At this point, he strode over to the stand and lifted the umbrella. Thinks he can order my wife about? Well, I'll damn well show him. I put out a hand to stop him. But he can. That was my Faustian bargain. It was the only way he could legally get me out of custody. Bertram paused. Since when has obeying the law mattered to that man? I was publicly accused of murder. Short of spiriting me out of the country, there was nothing he could do to save me from being hanged. The evidence, although largely circumstantial, was compelling enough for most jurors. I'd never have let that happen, said Bertram. I walked up to him and gently took the umbrella from his grasp. I didn't do this without considerable thought, I said. He explained in detail what it meant for me and my future. If anything, he tried to talk me out of accepting. No, he wanted you to run away with him. How can you say that? After he saved your nephew and nieces, not once but twice. I don't always like the way he behaves, but he does good in the end. You know that. Bertram made a gruff noise, like a bear that had hit its head on the roof of its own cave. But what does it mean? He said. It means if I am required to do something for king and country, then I must obey. Bertram gave a deep sigh, echoing my own earlier one. I suppose that's not so bad. I mean, on occasion it was almost fun, and together... I shook my head. Only I took the oath. Well, I'll take the damn thing too. I held out my hands to him. He took them. I raised his cold right hand to my lips and kissed it. You know I love you. But, said Bertram, his body taut with tension. I asked Fitzroy at the time, and he said because it was a military outfit, you could not be admitted. Due to your health. Bertram bristled like an indignant hedgehog. I am hardly ever ill. Besides, I cannot have my wife going into danger alone. I won't be alone, at least not for my first few missions. A heavy silence fell between us. I swallowed. You mean, said Bertram. I nodded. I'll be with Fitzroy. Bertram withdrew his hands from my grip. I see, he said in a tight voice. Well, while you attend to your guest, I shall retire. I opened my mouth, but he held up his hand in a most aggressive manner. You have explained. There is nothing more to be said. I must accept the situation. I must accept that my wife dances to the tune of another man. He went for the staircase without another word and mounted it swiftly. I stood there stunned. This was not the homecoming I had wished for. Fitzroy poked his head around the edge of the library door. Well, I think we can say that went about as well as we expected. It was with great difficulty that I prevented myself from picking up the nearest vase and throwing it at his head. And of course, things only get more complicated, more dangerous, and hopefully more exciting from there on. So that was from A Death at the Races. Stay well and stay safe.